In the quiet corners of the world, some stories whisper of things we cannot fully understand. The tale of June and Jennifer Gibbons is one such story. They were twins born in Barbados in 1963 and raised in Wales, but they were not like other children. From a very young age, they shared a bond so deep, so powerful, that it silenced them to the outside world. They were known as the silent twins. They spoke only to each other in a secret, sped-up language that no one else could decipher. To everyone else, their parents, their siblings, their teachers, they offered only a wall of impenetrable silence. Their connection was more than just sisterly love. It was a pact, a fortress they built around themselves, a shared existence where one could not be without the other. This bond was a source of both comfort and torment. They were each other's shadow, mirroring every movement, every glance, every unspoken thought. If one twin stood, the other stood. If one sat, the other sat. They moved through the world as a single entity, two bodies with one will. This synchronization was eerie to watch, a silent dance that left onlookers feeling like intruders on a private stage. Their family, loving and bewildered, tried everything to break through their self-imposed isolation. They were the only black children in their community, a fact that surely deepened their sense of being outsiders. But their silence was not born of shyness alone. It was a deliberate choice, a powerful statement against a world they refused to join. Their story is a chilling exploration of identity, isolation, and the mysterious ties that can bind two souls together. It asks questions that have no easy answers. What happens when a bond becomes a prison, when love and hate become so intertwined that they are indistinguishable? The twins' journey takes us from a quiet Welsh town to the dark corridors of a high-security psychiatric hospital. It is a story of creative genius and destructive obsession, of a love so fierce it could only end in sacrifice. The mystery of their lives is not just in their silence, but in the dark agreement they made, an agreement that would ultimately demand the highest price. The world of June and Jennifer was a closed system, a universe of two. Inside it they were queens, creators and confidants. Outside they were ghosts, strange figures who drifted through life without leaving a trace. Their refusal to speak was not passive. It was an act of defiance. It was their weapon and their shield. But as they grew older, the fortress they had built began to feel more like a cage. The very bond that protected them also suffocated them, leading them down a path of turmoil and tragedy. Their story is a haunting reminder that the deepest connections can sometimes hide the most profound loneliness, and that the human mind holds mysteries that we may never solve. From their earliest days in Haverfordwest, Wales, the Gibbons twins were inseparable. Their parents, Aubrey and Gloria, noticed their daughter's unusual closeness almost immediately. While their other children played and chattered, June and Jennifer existed in a bubble of their own making. They developed a private language, a rapid-fire patois based on Bajang Creole, spoken so quickly that it was incomprehensible to anyone else. This secret tongue became the foundation of their world. It was their way of communicating everything, their fears, their dreams, their frustrations. To their family, it was just noise, a barrier that kept them locked out. They would see the girls' lips moving, but the meaning was lost, a secret shared only between the two of them. At school, their silence became a solid wall. Teachers tried every method to encourage them to speak. They were bright girls, but they refused to read, write, or participate in any classroom activities. They would stand frozen like statues, their eyes cast down. The other children, unable to understand, resorted to bullying. The twins endured the taunts and cruelty without a word, their shared silence their only defense. Therapists were brought in, but they too failed to break through. The girls were separated in an attempt to force them into independence, but the experiment was a disaster. Apart, they became catatonic, completely withdrawn from the world, lost without their other half. It became clear that their bond was not something that could be easily broken. Their mirrored behavior was one of the most unsettling aspects of their childhood. They moved in perfect synchrony, a reflection of each other's actions. If June lifted her hand, Jennifer would lift hers at the exact same moment. They walked in step, their heads bowed at the same angle. It was as if they were controlled by a single invisible string. This physical unity was a manifestation of their psychological one. They saw themselves not as two separate people, but as two parts of a whole. This deep identification meant that any sense of individual self was lost. They were June and Jennifer, a single composite being, and the world outside was a foreign land they had no desire to explore. The response from adults was a mixture of confusion, frustration, and concern. Their parents loved them deeply, but felt helpless against the invisible wall their daughters had erected. Teachers saw them as a problem to be solved. Their silence, a defiance of authority. Medical professionals labeled them, trying to fit their unique condition into a known diagnosis, but none seemed to quite fit. The twins were elective mutes, yes, but their case was far more complex. Theirs was a shared world, a pact of silence made between two people. They were not just silent, they were silent together. This crucial distinction was often missed by the adults trying to help them, who saw two broken girls instead of one fiercely protected, albeit dysfunctional unit. As June and Jennifer entered their teenage years, their silent world found a new, vibrant form of expression writing. Locked away in their bedroom, they unleashed a torrent of creativity. They filled diary after diary with their thoughts, fears, and fantasies. These journals were their true voices, revealing the complex and often turbulent inner lives they hid from everyone. They wrote with a raw, desperate energy, documenting their daily struggles, their intense love-hate relationship, and their dreams of fame and recognition. The diaries were a secret world where they could finally be themselves, free from the judgment of others. It was here on the page that their individual personalities began to emerge, often in conflict with one another. Their creativity did not stop at diaries. The twins began to write novels, crafting elaborate stories with dramatic plots and vivid characters. They saved up their benefit money to have their books professionally published. Jennifer's novel, The Pugilist, told the story of a doctor who saves his son's life with a heart transplant from the family dog, only for the dog's spirit to possess the boy. June's novel, The Pepsi-Cola Addict, followed a high school student seduced by a teacher. Their stories were dark and often disturbing, reflecting the turmoil of their own lives. They longed to be seen as famous authors, to have their voices heard through their writing, even if they could not speak them aloud. But their creative outlet was not enough to contain the growing darkness within them. Their relationship, always a mix of intense love and rivalry, began to sour into something more dangerous. The diaries reveal a chilling power struggle. They would document their hatred for each other, one twin sometimes trying to strangle the other, only to be overcome with remorse moments later. Their isolation fueled their obsession with each other. They were each other's best friend and worst enemy, lover and tormentor. This volatile dynamic, once confined to their bedroom, began to spill out into the world in destructive ways. Their shared frustration and anger needed a release. This inner turmoil eventually led them to a life of petty crime. They started with minor acts of vandalism and theft, but their behavior escalated to arson. It was a cry for help, an attempt to make the world notice them in a way their silence never could. They wanted to be caught, to be seen. Their crime spree was short-lived. In 1981, they were arrested, and given their history of silent and bizarre behavior, they were declared psychopathic and sentenced not to prison but to Broadmoor. This was a high-security psychiatric hospital, home to some of Britain's most dangerous criminals. The twins, still teenagers, were about to enter the darkest chapter of their lives. The transfer to Broadmoor Hospital in 1982 marked a descent into a new kind of hell for June and Jennifer. They were just 19 years old, sentenced indefinitely for their crimes of arson and theft. Broadmoor was a place of stark, cold reality, a world away from the fantasy life they had created in their bedroom. Surrounded by hardened criminals and the severely mentally ill, their unique brand of silence and synchronized behavior only intensified. The hospital staff had never seen anything like it. The twins would refuse to speak to anyone, including their doctors and therapists. They would often stand or sit motionless for hours, their faces blank masks that betrayed no emotion. Their silence was now a form of institutional defiance. In this oppressive environment, their strange rituals became even more pronounced. They would eat in a bizarre, alternating pattern. One day, June would eat while Jennifer starved, and the next day they would switch. If one was given medication, she would often hold it in her mouth to pass to her sister later. Their lives were governed by a strict, unspoken set of rules. They continued their synchronized movements, walking the corridors in perfect step, their heads bowed. The staff at Broadmoor were baffled. They tried to separate them, placing them in different wards, but this only made their condition worse. Apart, they would become rigid and lifeless, refusing to move or eat until they were reunited. Despite their outward silence, their inner worlds continued to rage, captured in the pages of their diaries. They were given permission to keep journaling, and they filled dozens of notebooks. These writings from their time in Broadmoor are some of the most haunting. They reveal a deep obsession with life and death and a growing belief that their intense bond was a curse. They wrote about their love and their hatred, their desire for freedom and their despair at being trapped, not just in the hospital, but within their relationship. "Nobody suffers the way I do," Jennifer wrote. "Not with a sister, with a husband, yes, with a wife, yes, with a child, yes, but not with a twin sister, this morbid longing for my sister's death." The years at Broadmoor stretched on, a seemingly endless sentence. They were heavily medicated with antipsychotic drugs which left them sluggish and dulled their creative spark. Yet their core conflict remained. They were two individuals fighting for a single existence. The hospital, meant to be a place of treatment, became another cage that reinforced their isolation. They were trapped with each other, their identities so merged that one could not breathe without the other's permission. It was within these grim walls that they began to formulate a final, desperate plan, a plan that would require the ultimate sacrifice to achieve what they both craved more than anything: freedom. After 11 long years in the bleak confines of Broadmoor, a glimmer of hope appeared. A decision was made to transfer the twins to a lower security clinic in Wales, closer to their home. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the freedom they had dreamed of for over a decade. But as the day of the transfer approached, a strange and chilling conversation took place. The journalist Marjorie Wallace, who had befriended the twins and was documenting their story, was visiting them. During this visit, Jennifer looked at her with a calm, steady gaze and said something completely unexpected. Marjorie, she said, "I'm going to have to die." It was a shocking statement, delivered with a matter-of-fact certainty that was deeply unsettling. Wallace, taken aback, asked why she would say such a thing when they were so close to being free. Jennifer's reply was simple and devastating. "Because we decided," she explained. She spoke of a pact, an agreement made between her and June in the silent language of their shared mind. For one of them to be truly free, to live a normal life, the other had to give up her own. It was a sacrifice born of their twisted logic, the culmination of years of feeling that they were one soul trapped in two bodies. The world was not big enough for both of them. One had to be silenced forever so the other could finally speak. June, sitting beside her, seemed to understand and accept this grim resolution. The idea of this pact casts a dark shadow over their entire story. It suggests that their love-hate relationship had reached its final, tragic conclusion. For years, their diaries had been filled with violent fantasies and declarations of hatred for each other, alongside moments of deep affection. They saw each other as both a mirror and a jailer. Jennifer wrote, "We have become fatal enemies in each other's eyes." June wrote, "She wants me to die. I can feel it in her bones." This constant battle for dominance, for a singular identity, could only end with a victor and a vanquished. The pact was their way of resolving an impossible conflict, a final, desperate act to break the chains that bound them together. This was not a sudden decision. It was a conclusion they had slowly, painfully reached during their long years of incarceration. They had come to believe that their bond was a supernatural force, a possession that prevented either of them from living a full life. The only way to break the curse was through death. Jennifer, who seemed to be the slightly more dominant twin, the one who often initiated their actions, had chosen to be the one to make the sacrifice. Her statement to Wallace was not a cry for help or a sign of depression. It was an announcement. The decision was made. The price for June's freedom had been set, and Jennifer was ready to pay it. On March 9th, 1993, the day of their long-awaited transfer from Broadmoor, the twins were quiet but seemed hopeful. They were leaving the high-security hospital behind and heading to the Caswell Clinic in Wales. During the journey in the transport van, Jennifer rested her head on June's shoulder and appeared to fall asleep. It seemed like a peaceful moment, a quiet end to a long and difficult chapter, but it was something far more final. By the time they arrived at the clinic, Jennifer could not be woken. She was rushed to a nearby hospital, but it was too late. At just 29 years old, Jennifer Gibbons was pronounced dead. The first day of her freedom was also her last. An autopsy was immediately performed to determine the cause of death. The doctors were baffled. They found no evidence of drugs or poison in her system. There were no signs of a struggle, no hidden injuries, no indication of suicide. Her heart showed evidence of acute myocarditis, a sudden and severe inflammation of the heart muscle. But what had caused this inflammation? The pathologists could find no explanation. It was as if her body had simply decided to shut down. The cause of death was officially recorded as natural causes, but the circumstances were anything but natural. It was a medical mystery that seemed to defy all scientific explanation. The mystery deepened when considering Jennifer's own words just hours before she died. Her calm declaration that she was going to die now seemed like a prophecy fulfilled. Had she somehow willed herself to death? Could the sheer force of her mind, her conviction that this was necessary, have caused her heart to stop? This is a question that lingers, haunting the story of the silent twins. It pushes the boundaries of what we believe is possible, suggesting a connection between mind and body that science cannot yet measure. Her death was the physical manifestation of the pact she had made with her sister, a chilling and inexplicable event. The lack of a clear medical explanation leaves the door open to speculation. Was it a rare, undiagnosed condition that coincidentally struck at that exact moment? Or was it the final, powerful act of a shared consciousness? For those who knew the twins, the answer seemed clear. Jennifer had sacrificed herself for June. She had kept her side of the bargain. Her sudden, quiet death was not a random tragedy. It was the planned climax of their shared story. The silence that had defined her life seemed to follow her into death, leaving behind a profound and unsettling mystery that remains unsolved to this day. In the immediate aftermath of Jennifer's death, June's transformation was nothing short of astonishing. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The very next day she began to speak. The heavy, silent presence that had defined her for nearly 30 years lifted like a veil. She spoke to the doctors at the Caswell Clinic, to the nurses, and to her family. Her voice, unused for so long, was clear. She described the events of the previous day with a strange sense of calm. She told Marjorie Wallace, "I'm free at last, liberated, and at last Jennifer has given up her life for me." Her words were a confirmation of the pact, an acknowledgement of the sacrifice that had been made. The change in her behavior was dramatic. The synchronized movements, the mirrored actions, the catatonic states, they all vanished with Jennifer. June began to live as an individual for the first time. She no longer needed to starve herself on alternate days or follow the rigid, unspoken rules that had governed her life. The psychic prison she had shared with her sister had crumbled and she was stepping out of the ruins. It was a strange and complex kind of grief. She mourned the loss of her twin, her other half, but she also celebrated the birth of her own self. The duality that had tormented her was finally resolved. This new life was not without its challenges. June had to learn how to navigate a world she had always observed from behind a wall of silence. She had to build relationships, make decisions on her own, and forge an identity that was solely hers. But she did so with a quiet determination. She was released from the clinic and went to live with her parents in Wales. She began to re-engage with the world, going shopping, talking to neighbours, and trying to build a normal life. The shadow of her past was long, but she was no longer living in it. She was free from the intense, suffocating bond that had defined and nearly destroyed her. June's emergence from silence provides the most compelling evidence for the psychological theory that the twins operated as a closed system. Their shared identity was so powerful that it could not sustain two separate individuals in the real world. For one to thrive, the other had to cease to exist. Jennifer's death was not just a physical event, it was a psychological necessity for June's survival. It was the tragic, but in their view, necessary resolution to a lifelong struggle. June's newfound freedom was bought at the highest possible price, a fact she has had to live with every day since. In the years following Jennifer's death, June Gibbons has quietly built a new existence for herself. She lives a simple, unassuming life in West Wales, not far from her family. The woman who was once a silent, ghost-like figure now moves through her community with a gentle independence. She is no longer defined by her twin, no longer a part of the strange, synchronized duo that baffled and unnerved so many. She is simply June. This hard-won normalcy is the greatest tribute to the sacrifice her sister made. She has honored their pact by living the life that was denied to both of them for so long. Her relationship with her past is complex. She does not hide from it, but she does not dwell in it either. She regularly visits Jennifer's grave, a place of quiet reflection. The headstone is engraved with a poignant poem she wrote, a final communication between the two sisters. It speaks of their unique bond, their shared pain, and their ultimate separation. It is a place where she can connect with the memory of her twin without being consumed by her presence. The love remains, but the destructive obsession is gone. She carries the memory of Jennifer not as a burden, but as a part of who she is, the foundation upon which her freedom was built. Psychologists and researchers continue to be fascinated by the twins' story, offering various interpretations for their extreme behavior. Some suggest a form of folie à deux, or shared psychosis, where delusions are passed from one person to another. Others point to their status as isolated immigrants and the only black children in their school as a trigger for their extreme withdrawal. Another theory is that their bond was a form of psychic vampirism, where each twin drained the life force from the other in a constant struggle for identity. Their secret language and mirrored actions suggest a deeply enmeshed system where the boundaries between self and other completely dissolved. Ultimately, no single diagnosis can fully capture the complexity of their relationship. They were more than a case study. They were two human beings caught in an extraordinary and tragic situation of their own making. Their story forces us to question our understanding of identity, free will, and the profound, sometimes terrifying power of human connection. June's life today is a testament to the possibility of change and the resilience of the human spirit. She has found a quiet peace, a life unbound from the chains of her past, living for both herself and the sister she lost. The story of the silent twins does not end with a neat conclusion. It leaves us with a lingering echo of mystery and sadness. It is a tale that sits at the intersection of psychology, love, and the paranormal. The central question remains, what was the true nature of the bond between June and Jennifer Gibbons? Was it an extreme form of codependency, a shared psychological disorder, or something that defies our current understanding of the human mind? The fact that Jennifer could seemingly will her own death to fulfill a pact with her sister pushes the narrative into the realm of the uncanny. It suggests a power of intention so strong that it could physically manifest, a concept that is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. June's own reflections provide the most intimate insight into this mystery. She has spoken of her freedom, but also of her profound loss. "I lost my shadow," she once said. This simple statement captures the dual nature of their bond. Jennifer was her shadow, a constant, inescapable presence that both defined her and held her captive. To lose a shadow is to be able to stand fully in the light, but it is also to be utterly alone. June's life is a quiet navigation of this paradox. She gained her individuality, but lost the only person who ever truly understood her. Her freedom is tinged with the melancholy of a survivor who lives with the ghost of her other half. The emotional impact of their story is immense because it speaks to universal themes of identity and belonging. We all struggle to define who we are, both with and against the people we love. The twins' story is an extreme, magnified version of this struggle. Their bedroom was a microcosm of a world. Their diaries a testament to the creative and destructive forces that live within us all. Their inability to separate, their love that was also hate, their silence that was also a scream. These are powerful metaphors for the internal conflicts we all face. Their tragedy was that they could not find a way to resolve these conflicts without a fatal sacrifice. In the end, the tale of June and Jennifer Gibbons is a haunting modern fable. It is a story about the desperate search for a voice and the terrible price of silence. It reminds us that the most intense relationships can be both a sanctuary and a prison. The echo of their lives challenges us to look deeper into the mysteries of human connection and the fragile line between self and other. June lives on, a quiet symbol of a life reclaimed from the shadows. But the story of the two who were one will forever whisper of a bond so powerful it could command life and death, leaving us to wonder at the silent, unseen forces that shape our world.